This video marks the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new era. Welcome to the story time of my very first birth. Not my birth. The birth of our very first daughter. This is the first video that I am filming postpartum. I'm currently about 3.5 weeks postpartum, and it took me a little bit longer to get around to filming this than I anticipated. I'm not gonna lie, I thought I was gonna bounce back a lot faster, but recovery has been hard. I have a story time for you. I'm going to just kind of walk through my experience with my first birth. I had a scheduled induction, which did not go according to plan. So I actually ended up getting a C-section, which I knew was a possibility, but I really didn't think was gonna happen. But I was prepared. I mean, as prepared as I can be. I was mentally prepared. Well, I won't even say that. I just knew that that was a possibility, and I was okay with that, is my point. So we're gonna walk through my story time. I didn't do a birth vlog. I didn't know if I was gonna be allowed to film, which we weren't allowed to film in the hospital at all anyway. But things were a little bit stressful and chaotic, and we just needed to be there in the moment and not have another thing to worry about. So I will include pictures and our daughter Luna. I haven't said that on my YouTube channel yet. Her name is Luna, name reveal. I already posted it on Instagram as well as my YouTube community tab, but our daughter's name is Luna Estelle Carrero, and I'm so happy that I can finally say that. We had a couple people guess it, and our nursery theme is like moons and suns and clouds and stars and that kind of thing, so I felt like it was kind of obvious, or it could have been obvious, so I wasn't surprised that a few people had guessed it. But yeah, that's her name, Luna. She is 3.5 weeks old. She will be 4 weeks old this Thursday, which is mind-blowing. Like, when they say the days are long but the months are short, or the weeks are short, or the whatever are short, I have never felt that more than I have right now. So anyway, let's dive in. Baby girl is happy and healthy. I am happy and healthy. I actually am going to do a postpartum update. I'm gonna do a couple of them. I want to do a 4-week postpartum update as well as a 6-week postpartum update after I have my like 6-week appointment. It's actually a 5-week appointment. I'm talking too much. All right, I'll get into my postpartum experience in another video, but this video is going to be all about the birth experience, the labor experience, and all of that. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I was scheduled to go in for my induction on November 1st at 7 p.m. So my husband and I went to the hospital at 7 p.m. We checked in, we got to our room. It was way bigger than we anticipated. I knew that most labor and delivery rooms were like large, but this was like really big. I feel like the overall hospital staff experience was really nice. We saw quite a few different nurses because we were there from Wednesday night is when we went in, and then we left Saturday like evening, Saturday afternoon. So I was there for like 4 days. But overall, the general hospital experience was really great. I'm really happy with the decision to give birth at that hospital and all of that. So we got there, we checked in, and they started me on a medication to help soften my cervix, and it's called Miso is what they kept calling it. It's like misoprostol or something. I don't know the name of it, but it's something, it's a cervix ripening agent. And they started me on that at around 8 p.m. and that was something that I had to take every 4 hours. So that immediately I started feeling contractions. I was not in labor, obviously, at the beginning of my induction. My previous cervical measurement was a fingertip, and that had been 2 weeks prior, so I was hoping that they would check my cervix and I would be farther along than that, but they actually didn't check my cervix until I don't know, 3 rounds of this medication. So it wasn't until the next day that I had my cervix checked. So that first night was pretty rough, not gonna lie. I think Jarvis and I were both really anxious, and nervous. I was definitely in some pain because I was starting to feel contractions. But it felt like a cramp in your calf, like a Charlie horse cramp. That's literally the best explanation or comparison that I can think of. That is what it felt like over my entire stomach. It got so tight, definitely more painful than like the Braxton Hicks contractions I was experiencing, but nothing that I couldn't like talk through. Like, it was uncomfortable and I might have like done like that or something, but nothing overly intense, at least in the beginning. And so it was rough. Jarvis had to sleep on an uncomfortable little couch situation, which a couch sounds great, but he actually ended up moving to the recliner because the couch was so uncomfortable. So he did not get a good night of sleep that first night. Then I was, you know, going through the medication that second day, and I finally had my cervix checked, and I was so excited. And when I tell you, that was so incredibly painful. I don't want to like scare anybody, but wow, did that hurt. I thought my first cervical check, a breeze. I don't even know if she actually checked my cervix or he actually checked my cervix. I was thinking it was a different doctor. I saw like a bunch of doctors so over the course of my pregnancy. First cervical check was literally nothing, like less than a pap smear. Second cervical check I had was pretty painful. Like, I was wincing in pain. The first one that I had at the hospital, which would have been my third overall, I was squeezing Jarvis's hand so hard and it hurt so bad. So yeah, that was pretty rough. And so at this point I had been experiencing contractions pretty regularly for about 12 hours, and my cervix was still at a fingertip. So I had not dilated one little bit from the 2 weeks prior, in addition to the 12 hours of this medication. So that was a little bit disheartening. And you know, didn't make me feel the best, because it felt like all this pain that I was experiencing was for nothing. All this pain and discomfort and stress and all of that. So we basically decided to continue rounds of this medication. And I was on a clear liquid diet, so I wasn't allowed to eat anything other than, like, you know, juice, clear juices, or clear broth. Jarvis ended up going to like a sushi place and getting me some clear soup, because I was allowed to eat that. I just couldn't eat the little like crispies that go in it, which is like my favorite part. So I had lots of clear soup that day. And the night before he had also done that. I think I had like 6 clear soups in the span of 24 hours, maybe even 8 clear soups if I'm being honest. It was the only thing that I like sounded good and that I was allowed to eat, so eat. So that's a whole other thing, was I feel like having not like real food for so long, you know, didn't help the situation and how I was feeling. You know, I was definitely trying to stay positive, and I was still like, you know, ready to go and whatever. So we decided to continue the medication. I say we, meaning like me, my doctor, just that was the decision that was made to continue this medication. It was not Pitocin, it's like a different medication. And they also talked about doing a balloon where once your cervix dilates enough, they can stick a balloon and like mechanically help dilate you to a certain number of centimeters, and then they can start giving you Pitocin and then progress with the induction. So that was like the plan, was to continue this medication until I was like 2 or 3 centimeters, so that they could insert the balloon, and the balloon goes through your cervix and then inflates, and then it causes pressure to help stimulate your cervix to continue to open up. And then once the balloon opens up your cervix enough, then you can start Pitocin. That's the explanation that I got from my the medical personnel in the hospital. So that was the plan. So we continued this, you know, medication, and for the rest of the day, and then it was 3 p.m. So at this point, I started it at 8 p.m. the previous day. Now it's 3 p.m. the next day. Had another cervical check. still nothing. Still a fingertip, no additional dilation, which the second time hurt a little bit more, hurt my heart a little bit more, hurt my soul. I felt very discouraged because at this point my contractions were getting more painful and I was in a lot of discomfort, and I just was not, you know, mentally not doing great. We had practically no sleep that night. I was hungry. So, you know, it wasn't fun. And I do want to say that overall I will say I had I would consider my birth experience to be positive. So I just wanted to throw that out there, even though I'm like talking about all these like negative, like not fun things. Overall, I would say it was a positive birth experience. So I just want to put that out there. That I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm not trying to, you know, I'm just telling you my experience, and even though like parts of it sucked, I would still choose for everything to happen the way that it did, and I'm still, you know, I'm happy with how everything worked out, and overall it was a good experience. I think no matter the birthing situation, you're gonna experience pain, you're gonna experience discomfort and anxiety and worry and all of those things. So I just want to throw that out there as well. I'm not trying to like complain or scare anybody. It still was great. So oh man, anyway, so yeah, still had not dilated. My doctor had, you know, given me options. He said, it's not too late. You can, you know, go home for a few days and, you know, come back and we can try the induction again. He said he didn't recommend that because the reason for my induction was elevated blood pressure, and my blood pressure was elevated even at the hospital. And that, you know, makes sense because it wasn't anything crazy high, but it was high enough to where they wanted me to get induced at 39 weeks, which is what happened. So he said that is an option for me, but that wasn't, you know, probably what he would recommend. He was I loved my doctor. He was very like giving me all of the options, keeping me informed, and not like pushing a certain thing onto me, which was a little bit stressful because I kind of wanted a little bit of guidance in the moment, because I didn't know what the right decision was. But I also appreciated that he wasn't like pushing me to do a certain thing for whatever fit his schedule best. I loved my doctor, great experience. I would, you know, assume if I have another kid, I would love for him to deliver her or him. So anyway, that was an option. We had the option to continue the medication, or C-section was an option. So there was a few different things that I had to consider. My nurse was a little bit pushy for not doing a C-section. I felt a lot of anxiety from that. So if any medical personnel, nurses, doctors, whatever, if you feel pressured by them to make a certain decision, I'm sorry if you have to go through that. That was not fun. That was like one of my least favorite parts of this whole experience. And it wasn't like, she just was giving her personal experience, and I felt very pressured to not choose a C-section because of that. Which I understand. Like, she said she had had both, and you know, the recovery for the C-section was way worse, and she 10 out of 10 she would not recommend me getting a C-section. She said things like that, which was very stressful in the moment because I wanted to consider everything, and I'm like, well, do I take this lady's like personal experience and consider that when I'm making a decision about myself and my child? So that was a lot, and it was kind of not great. That was the only like kind of not fun thing with like all of the nurses and doctors that I had, but like, you know, been in contact with. So she did advocate for me and ask the doctor, like, well, either way, is it okay if she eats something? Which I appreciated. So she basically, you know, discussed with the doctor, and He said that it was okay for me to have a meal, nothing too crazy, but to have a meal, take a break from the medication for, you know, a few hours, 4 hours or whatever it was, so that I can kind of get a boost of energy, because at this point nothing was happening anytime soon. So 3 p.m. I decided to take a break from the medication, eat a meal, and then wait the 4 hours or however long it was, and then restart this medication and see what happens. So I took a break, ate some Cracker Barrel. Actually, it was eggs and toast. It was like the best meal ever because I was so hungry and I just needed food. So I had some scrambled eggs, some toast, and it was incredible. So that was my induction break meal. So I ate that, and you know, I definitely was feeling a little bit better. My spirits were up a bit, and then I got right back on the medication, took the medication again, and actually had taken it 2 more times. So I took it 2 more times after I was allowed to start taking it again. No, I only took it 1 more time. I took it 1 more time. So I'm like trying to not be too specific with the times, because it also has been 3.5 weeks since this happened. But you know, I waited, took the medication, and he came back in for another cervical check, and nothing. And at this point it's about 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m., probably like 9:30, something like that, on November 2nd. So at this point it's been over 24 hours since I started the medication, and this last cervical check was so painful that I literally cried. Like, tears were coming out of my eyes, and it was not fun. That was the most painful part of this whole situation, were the cervical checks, honestly. And they felt like they were really long, and it was terrible. I literally felt so bad for Jarvis because I was squeezing his hand so hard, and I was like, you know, I'm sure it wasn't fun for him to see me like that either, because it was, you know, it was not comfortable. It was truly painful. And at this point, over 24 hours on the medication, literally nothing. Still maybe a fingertip dilated. So at this point, it's been over 24 hours, so this is considered a failed induction. Again, not a doctor, I'm just giving you the information that was given to me and how I interpreted it and all of that. So I basically had a failed induction of labor, and had no progress. So at this point, my doctor didn't recommend, he said I could continue the medication, but there is a point where you don't want to be on this medication for too long, like too many consecutive doses. So that was something to consider. He said we could try to start Pitocin, but you know, that has its own risks and its own situations, but that's a possibility. Just go in and try to start Pitocin, being, you know, not dilated, which would probably be very painful, and you know, doesn't guarantee a natural delivery, or like, you know, birth canal delivery. I knew that I wanted an epidural when the time was ready, but we didn't even get to that point. I think Jarvis is home. I have my baby monitor here, by the way. I have the volume cranked all the way up. Listening for her, but I think Jarvis is home, so he'll be able to keep an eye out for her now. So Pitocin was an option. Going home and, you know, trying again was another option, which that one I really didn't consider, because like at this point I just didn't want to go home and then go through all of this again in a few days. And then C-section was an option. So I guess technically I did elect to have a C-section. That's obviously the decision that I chose, or the option that I went with. And I was really nervous because it sounded like the most appealing option, even though, you know, obviously C-section is C-section and it's major abdominal surgery, but I wanted to make sure that I was choosing that, and not because I was like tired and done and like selfishly choosing that option. I wanted to make the best decision for me and Luna. So I had a lot of anxiety about that, and that's where I kind of wanted some guidance from the doctor, which I don't know what he's allowed to give as far as like recommendation or guidance, but that was like where I was like wanting to hear that like that was a good decision, and not just like, you know, he has to tell me that as an option. So it definitely was not an easy decision, and you know, we talked about it. We sat there for, I don't know, like 15-20 minutes, Jarvis and I talking about it, and then the nurse and doctor came back, and we, you know, decided that C-section was what I wanted to do, because birth canal delivery was not happening anytime soon, and it obviously isn't guaranteed anyway, and there was a lot that went into the decision, but ultimately that's what we decided. And I asked him when he came back in, I was like, so if I decide to have a C-section, like, when is that gonna happen? And he was like, we could probably have her here in about an hour. And I was like, what? Like, I was not prepared for that. And so once we, you know, finally said like, yes, that's what we would like to happen, they immediately got me ready, and you know, they were getting everything set up, getting the OR ready, and they got me all prepped to go back there, and it was very scary. I was shaking uncontrollably. Like I've seen women shake in labor, like when they're on like Pitocin and stuff. At this point I wasn't like hooked up to any medications or anything, but I was shaking uncontrollably from this point until like hours after I had my C-section. So Jarvis was able to be there for me. I was awake for the C-section. I had to get a spinal, I guess is what it's called, which was probably the worst part of the whole C-section situation, because Jarvis wasn't allowed to be in there with me. So the nurse was so sweet. She was like letting me like hold on to her arms while she held on to mine, because you have to like sit on the edge of the bed and like curl your back while they poke you. And I was so nervous. I was anxious and shaking, and like tears were coming down, you know. It was very overwhelming. And the anesthesiologist actually missed twice for my spinal, and then a different person came over and got it right in the right spot. So I was worried, because they had mentioned like if they can't get the spinal done in like 3 tries or something like that, then I'd have to go under general anesthesia, and that freaked me out. So I was like, please, 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 like, please don't miss this time. So luckily he got in the right spot, and immediately they laid me down, because it's like immediately my body was tingling and I was going numb. So I had my C-section, curtain was up, Jarvis came in, he's sitting there. I was really, I don't know, it was a lot. It was very overwhelming. Looking back, it was a little bit of a blur, and you know, I obviously had different medications hooked up to me, and it was a lot. But Jarvis sat there at the head of the bed with me and just talked to me about random stuff. He was talking to me about fantasy football, and I don't even know what else. I couldn't tell you. I remember him saying something about Najee Harris, and that's about it. But he was just talking to me. I didn't want to hear anything that the doctors were saying. I just wanted to escape that like thought during the surgery. It was completely painless. I could feel like tugging and moving. I could move my arms were out to my side like this, laying flat on my back is how they had me, and then the curtain was like here straight up, so I couldn't see anything anyway. And uh-oh, we have a crier. Jarvis just sat there talking to me, and it felt like a long time, but it really wasn't that long. I don't know how long it took from like the point when Jarvis walked in, like maybe like 15-20 minutes or so, and then the anesthesiologist comes over and is like, what kind of music do you like? And I literally couldn't even like talk. So Jarvis answered for me. He was like, she loves Taylor Swift. And then she was like, okay. And she has her phone out on like Spotify or something. And then she starts playing Shake It Off by Taylor Swift out loud in the OR. Just like, you know, it's bumping in there. And then they're like, all right. And I'm like, oh God, what's like happening? And then we hear a baby crying. They drop the curtain. Jarvis can see her. I still can't see her at this point because I'm like, I'm trying to like look like this, but the curtain was like bunched up on my chest, so I couldn't see her still, but Jarvis was able to see her. She's crying. Shake It Off is playing, and it was very crazy. It happened so fast, and they ended up putting the curtain back up. They got her cleaned up, weighed her and all that, and Jarvis was able to go over and, you know, cut her umbilical cord. And I don't really remember a lot of, because again, like, I was very overwhelmed, and I was also staring at a blue sheet the whole time. Like, I could only like look around the room so much. Like, I couldn't see him cutting the cord or them weighing her or anything like that. They were still in the same room, but like I said, it was a big room. But Taylor Swift was playing, which honestly eased eased my my stress levels a little bit. And then Jarvis came back over to me, and I was like asking, what does she look like? Like, what, like, you know, like, I don't know. It was so weird. I felt so like calm, but also like I was still like shaking, like literally shaking. And they ended up, you know, wrapping her up and giving her to him, and he was sitting next to me, and I'm like trying to look, but he's like doesn't know how to hold her, so he's like trying to show her to me, but he doesn't want to like move her too much, and it was really funny. So they ended up stitching me up and transferring me over to like the regular hospital bed, and they put her next to me, and I'll include pictures of this. I'm definitely not the most flattering pictures of me, but we're just gonna appreciate the moment and the memories, and you know, it is what it is. I definitely don't look like a lot of the other moms in their labor and delivery videos and whatnot. A lot of them look very put together. That was not me. So they put her next to me. I don't even remember getting like wheeled back to the room. She was born at like 10:40 something p.m. So within like an hour and a half of deciding that we wanted this to happen, she was here, and it actually took longer for them to like close everything up than the actual like C-section part took, like the delivery part. But they did a great job, and we didn't have any complications or anything like that. We went back to the room. I ended up, you know, FaceTiming my parents, and they got to see her. It was like 1:30 in the morning at this point. We tried our best to sleep, but that was, you know, basically we didn't sleep. She was really good. It wasn't because she was crying or anything. I think we were just like anxious and wanted to make sure she was still breathing, and people were still coming in for vitals and all of that. So yeah, we had her on November 2nd at 10:40-ish p.m. and that's pretty much the story of my labor and delivery. She was 8 pounds 1 ounce when she was born, at 20.5 inches, I think. And yeah, she's perfect. Then the next day my parents were able to come and see her. This is their first granddaughter, first grandkid on like my whole like my whole side of the family. Well, it's technically second, but on like my mom's whole side, which is like the local family that we have, she's like the first, you know, grandkid / great grandkid to my mom's parents, my grandparents on my mom's side, but still only the second grandkid on my whole side of the family. So very, you know, that's including that, like, my cousin has a daughter. She had a daughter earlier this year. So my dad's brother's daughter had a daughter. I am getting way too detailed right now. Anyway, it was a big deal, very exciting. My parents' first grandkid, so they got to meet her. Jarvis's parents got to meet her as well. They all came that next day. And they got to meet her and see her, and it was just really, it was awesome, you know. It was rough, it was painful, you know. The recovery has been a whole other thing, which, like I said, I'm gonna do a postpartum update. But we ended up in the hospital. So I gave birth at Thursday night, you know, so Friday was my first, like, full day of, like, having already had her. So Friday, and then Saturday, I think it was like 3 or 4 p.m. is when we ended up leaving the hospital. So that is pretty much the story of my labor and delivery. If you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to answer them. I can't wait for you guys to meet her. Like I said, she's sleeping right now, so I'll include pictures of her, but you'll meet her in a different video, I suppose. But yeah, it was definitely overall a positive experience. It was scary as, like, a first time situation, but I trusted my doctors and my nurses, and I felt like we were taken care of really well, and overall great experience. And I would do it again. At first I was like, I don't know if I could do this again, but 3 weeks later I'm like, you know, like, maybe we'll do it again. You know, the newborn phase has been honestly harder than the actual delivery situation, from, like, recovery to learning how to take care of a child to not sleeping any. All of that has been harder, but I know it's gonna be worth it, you know. So yeah, that's my experience. I'm excited to get back to filming. I am going to try to do Vlogmas this year. We'll see how that goes. You're gonna have to give me some wiggle room, but I do plan on doing Vlogmas, and it'll be interesting. So thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, shout out to you. Comment down, like, a white heart if you made it all the way to this point in the video. So I know who the real ones are. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any comment or questions in the comment section. I love you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.